In the shadowy world of international arms dealing, there are few figures as enigmatic and controversial as Viktor Bout, a former Soviet Air Force officer turned global arms smuggler. Bout's life story reads like a Hollywood thriller. In fact, it was.
There are over 550 million firearms in worldwide circulation. That's one firearm for every 12 people on the planet. The only question is, how do we arm the other 11?
Today we'll dive into the fascinating life and times of this notorious arms dealer and how he became a part of the craziest trade in basketball history. Viktor Bout's story begins in Tajikistan in 1967. Born into a family of intellectuals, Bout's early life gave no indication of the path he would eventually follow. He was educated as an engineer and served in the Soviet Air Force during the late 1980s. However, the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 opened up new opportunities and challenges for Bout. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, vast arsenals of military equipment became available, and Bout recognized an opportunity. He didn't make any weapons, he was just able to operate a fleet of cargo planes. Not only having a great understanding of logistics, his company was willing to make deliveries to places where others didn't want to go. He became a pioneer in the underground world of arms dealing, supplying weapons to various war-torn regions around the globe, from Africa to the Middle East. His operation was low-key, complex, and highly profitable. Viktor Bout's nickname, the Merchant of Death, was given to him by a British politician. It wasn't like his rapper name that he chose. Some say it was well earned as he consistently eluded authorities and UN sanctions. He operated a vast network of cargo planes and front companies, often transporting weapons hidden in humanitarian aid shipments, making it nearly impossible for law enforcement to track him down. Some of those companies were even used by the United States a couple times. Bout's criminal empire made him a wanted man on an international scale because of where he's from, more than what he actually did. But Bout's luck eventually ran out. Like any drug dealer in history, he was taking steps out of the game when a former business partner reached out to Bout for one last deal, one last hoorah. In 2008, after a high-stakes sting operation led by the United States, he was arrested in Thailand. The operation involved undercover agents posing as Colombian rebels from the FARC, seeking arms from Bout. They negotiated with him for the supply of about 100 surface-to-air missiles and armor-piercing rocket launchers to be airdropped by Bout to agreed landing spots in Colombia. The imposters invited Bout to Thailand to meet their leader. US prosecutors and law enforcement were aided by Andrew Smulyan, a former South African intelligence agent and associate of Bout who acted as a go-between and became an informant against Bout. His friend set him up. It led to his extradition to the US, where he was put on trial for conspiracy to provide material support to a terrorist organization. During the meeting, the undercovers kept saying things like, "These are going to be used for the Americans." There doesn't seem to be much evidence that showed he was a political guy. He just delivered weapons to whoever would buy it, sometimes even selling to both sides of conflicts. He didn't start these conflicts, just delivered goods. He didn't choose sides, but the United States used the words of the undercovers to portray him as an enemy of the US because his company was good, but he didn't play for our team. After a long and complex legal battle, Viktor Bout was convicted in 2011 and sentenced to 25 years in prison. In 2013, his conviction will be upheld. Now, what does any of this have to do with basketball? Well, that same year the appeal was denied, the WNBA's Phoenix Mercury drafted 6'9" center Brittany Griner with the #1 overall pick out of Baylor University. It's important to lay out how dominant she really was and what led to the story of these two people to cross paths. Brittany was the #1 player coming out of high school, Player of the Year, and McDonald's All-American. In college, she was a 4-time Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, 3-time Big 12 Player of the Year, 2nd-team All-American, 2-time First-team All-American, 2-time Player of the Year, and is the only NCAA basketball player to both score 2,000 points and get 500 blocks, and then led her Baylor squad to an NCAA championship in 2012. That was just college. In the pros, She was a 2-time scoring champion, 8-time blocks leader, 7-time All-Star, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, 7-time All-Defensive Team, won the WNBA championship her second year, 4-time EuroLeague champion, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, and 3-time Russian National League champion. Wait, why was she playing in the Russian National League in the first place? Well, the WNBA is not a profitable organization, so their players are not millionaires like their male counterparts. A lot of the WNBA play overseas during their offseason because those leagues pay them more, especially to someone of her caliber. I'm sure the Russian league would have loved to have Shaq in his prime. Like in the 2013-2014 offseason, she signed a 4-month contract in China with the Xijing Golden Bulls for $600,000, which was 12 times the amount she made with the Mercury. So that leads us to 2022.
And about 5 minutes later, we started to hear the first explosions.
Vladimir Putin has just addressed the Russian people moments ago, announcing what Putin called the start of a military special operation, in his words, to demilitarize Ukraine.
I mean, judging by those words, this appears to be the worst case scenario.
Where conflict led to Russia invading Ukraine, which is only important to the story because of the timing. On February 17, 2022, Griner was arrested on drug smuggling charges in Russia. She was detained at a Russian airport after the Federal Customs Service found she was carrying vaporizer cartridges containing less than a gram of hash oil. In Arizona, she had been prescribed medicinal cannabis, which is illegal in Russia. The second day of her trial, Griner pleaded guilty. On August 4th, the court found Griner guilty and sentenced her to 9 years in prison and fined her 1 million rubles, which is about $16,000. Even though the standard sentence for possession of no more than 2 grams of hash oil is 15 days. Some US officials expressed concern that Russia may have been using Griner as leverage in response to the Western sanctions imposed against Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. The former Pentagon official Evelyn Farkas expressed concern that Griner could be used as a, quote, high-profile hostage by Russia. In May 2022, during the trial, the US State Department stated that they had determined Griner was being, quote, wrongfully detained. On May 15th, it was reported that the US and Russia would consider a prisoner swap, with Russia exchanging Griner for who? None other than our dear old merchant of death, arms dealer Viktor Bout, who had served 10 years of a 25-year federal prison sentence in the United States. On December 8th, she was released by Russia in a 1-for-1 prisoner swap for Bout. Now Brittany is back with her family and continuing her career in the WNBA, and Bout is retired from his profession, well, as far as we know. Viktor Bout's story is one of intrigue, international espionage, and controversy. His arms dealing empire helped a lot of already war-torn countries and areas carry out plans to escalate those conflicts. This isn't a story of a good guy done wrong by the US government, but I think we could all agree those were some dirty tricks to take him down. For more interesting stories, be sure to subscribe. Peace.